Over half a century ago, an animated television series by Hanna-Barbera would appear on every television set across America, and it was Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? A show that was enjoyable for both its intended audience being kids and its older audience being adults. The series would follow the lives of California high school students and friends, Fred, Daphne, Velma, and Shaggy. The kids were accompanied by a Great Dane and the star of the show, Scooby-Doo, as they would roam California in their mystery machine solving, you guessed it, mysteries. However, each episode and adventure would usually end the same. For instance, a ghost who was allegedly haunting the castle would turn out to be an ex-magician who was in search of an old treasure. He would use wires to make it appear like he was floating around in a projector and trick mirrors to make it seem as if he was walking through walls. The point we are making is that for most cases, once unmasked, these mysteries would come to an end, solved over and over. Textbook cases, all of them. However, throughout all the mysteries that the gang had solved, one mystery would go on unsolved for decades in every reincarnation of the animated series, from Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? To What's New, Scooby-Doo? To even today's Scooby-Doo, and guess who? They've never answered this question. A question that has lurked and roamed its viewers' minds for generations. A question that has never been solved. Until today. Why can Scooby-Doo speak?
Huh? Ready, roll!
Why is a Great Dane able to communicate at such an intelligent level? How is it that he can understand as much as he does? Understand concepts of human desire and culture. Sure, dogs are one of the smartest species in the animal kingdom, but we don't think they have the ability to solve mysteries, construct traps, and explain to police officers why the villain committed such acts. How is this possible? Well, this is the Nazi Soviet Scooby-Doo theory. Postulate 1. Cold War Scoob. The Cold War, one of the most bizarre times in American history. In a little over 2 months after Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin would successfully land Apollo 11 on the moon, the first airing of Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? Would debut. The United States' main goals of putting men on the moon could be narrowed down to 2 things: science and, well, bragging rights. It just so happens that the Soviet Union were also determined to put their men on the moon as well. Today, it is referred to as the space race, as both countries strived to be the first ones in history to land and step foot on the moon's surface. Now, while landing on the moon itself is a conspiracy, putting dogs into space is not. As during this era of time, before humans ever graced orbit, they would send test subjects, being animals, into orbit first. Better safe than sorry. The Soviets, however, were very fond of sending dogs into space. Many dogs would go from the streets of Russia and into the nighttime sky. Laika, a part Samoan terrier, was the first dog sent into space in 1957. Sadly, immediately after launch, Laika had passed. While she was the first pup to ever leave our atmosphere, she would not be the last. See, the Soviets, along with many other countries during this time period, were growing fond of the idea of experimenting. Even in the Americas, the CIA has been known and credited with some of the most inhumane trials with cloning and mutations this world has ever seen. The Soviets were no different, and were also credited with some bizarre things within those cold, icy Siberian labs. We all know of another popular conspiracy based in Russia, the popular Russian sleep experiment. Am I right? Exactly. Now, while all of this is going on, what if Scooby-Doo is just another Russian experiment? Postulate 2. Project Scoob. Yes, Scooby-Doo may in fact be a failed experiment by the Soviet Union sometime in the mid-1950s. What we are suggesting is that Scooby-Doo may be the result of an advanced experimental breeding program that granted Scooby-Doo the gift of higher intelligence. While this may sound far-fetched, it is very much possible, both in the animated world and the real world. All the way back then, and even today sadly, animals are being tested on. Whether it's risking their innocent lives to send them off into space, or testing different kinds of chemicals or shampoos and conditioners on them. Animals have always been the epicenter of such experiments. After World War II, a lot of German scientists had relocated. Many of them, believe it or not, would end up in Russia. Most scientists in this time period were involved in these tests, and modification studies were actually of German descent. It is more than possible that some of these German scientists recruited by the Soviets may have brought over their canines, which would explain why many of them would be Great Danes, as a Great Dane is a German breed. This brings us to another excellent point. Why Great Danes? Truly, there must be a reason why it is a Great Dane over the more commonly known German Shepherd. Well, here is where we dive deep. One of Scooby's most well-known traits is his human-like ability to speak. Let's travel back to 1930 and take a look into, before I say the name, I'm going to butcher it. I couldn't find the correct pronunciation on this, so I'm going to give it my best. Let's travel back to 1930 and take a look into Hundesprechschule Asra. I think that's close enough, which was a training institution for dogs that took place in Germany. During World War II, this would become the most famous academy for highly, and I mean highly trained dogs. The name of the school was named after a Great Dane. This Great Dane was the most famous, and more notably the mother, to most of the dogs at this school. The dogs were trained to talk, count, and even reason. In 1944, a child described the dog's talents, saying that the dogs could tell the time, describe people, and even correct misspellings. The dogs could speak some words, but were limited by their anatomical structure. Just like Scooby-Dooby-Doo. Where this takes a weird and dark turn is here. Adolf Hitler, a person who needs no introduction, was actually very intrigued and interested in these talking hounds. The Germans viewed canines as being almost as intelligent as humans and attempted to build an army of fearsome, speaking dogs. British tabloids at the time had suspected this, but it was never confirmed until recent years. The Nazis took their dogs very seriously. The Guardian reported that the Nazi government was so furious with a dog in Finland who was trained to imitate Hitler with a Nazi salute that the German Foreign Office tried to kill its owner. It is very possible. Some of these German scientists who were recruited into Russia during the Cold War took it upon themselves to further these experiments and create a genetically engineered dog, the likes of which the world has never seen. Postulate 3. More than a dog. While everything we have stated thus far seems to be a bit of a stretch, the next line of evidence is surely not. Scooby-Dooby-Doo is more than just a run-of-the-mill Great Dane. He can talk, although his English isn't that great, and he can also communicate with other animals. Other than the relatives of Scoob, he's the only animal on the show who has these abilities, and also the ability to partake in human-like tasks. Scooby joins his owner and best pal, Norville Shaggy Rogers, in a vast variety of jobs and occupations. Let's travel back. Looking back to the series A Pup Named Scooby-Doo, Scooby worked out of a clubhouse with the gang called the Scooby-Doo Detective Agency, or the SDDA. In episode 101, Scooby-Doo is a construction worker, and in Scooby-Doo and the Ghoul School, he works as a gym teacher. This would be considered normal in the Scooby-Doo universe if other animals had these abilities and features as well, but it turns out they do not. Scooby can also stand on his hind legs, which he gradually does more and more often as the years and the seasons go by. Is he still evolving? Maybe. But then again, maybe not. Oh, this hind leg behavior can be seen when dealing with Scrappy, Scooby's nephew, when he wanted to keep himself and Scrappy safe and away from the monsters. To add to this, he can also morph his body to mimic any monster or person that he has encountered. And looking back at the Scooby-Doo and WrestleMania mystery, Scooby is not only a master at dancing, but he also got a perfect score on the WWE's Victory Dance. How can Scooby-Doo do so many things? Simple. He was created to do. Postulate number 4. The purpose and the chase. So maybe you're wondering, after all this, the Soviets, the Nazis, the moon, Scooby-Doo, how is this connected and why? Why is this even a thing? Well, there's actually a very reasonable conclusion to explain the brunt of this. As we stated prior, it may be hard to understand him when he speaks, but that is no mistake. If designed and genetically modified by the Soviets for the Soviets during the Cold War, this would actually make too much sense. Scooby's purpose, or so we think, was for learning capabilities. A K9 that can function like a human and understand and comprehend things like one as well. Scoob's mouth is not bred to speak the human language, but his mind has been altered to understand it. Think of this as a spy tactic. Great Danes are a common dog in the United States. So what if the Soviet Union's plan was to send dogs over into the States and gather intelligence for the Red Army? Think about that. We've seen Scooby-Dooby-Doo use the telephone, so he is obviously bred for something greater than eating Scooby snacks. The speech impediment is what explains the motive of the USSR, as he wasn't necessarily bred to talk, as much as he was bred to listen. This period of spying was called the Cold War espionage, as both nations, the Soviet Union and the United States, would spy on one another to gain valuable information. There were Soviet spies, secret devices, and advancements in technology, all with the purpose to access top secret information from the Americans. For example, the Bulgarian umbrella was both an umbrella, camera, and a gun. And the Dragonfly insectocopter was a camera designed to look like a dragonfly. Who's to say Scooby-Doo wasn't another Soviet spy device as well? Postulate 5. Plot holes. A large sum of this theory follows a Reddit fan theory, whose author goes by the name The Mighty Heptagon. Now we have taken it upon ourselves to go a little further in depth, as his theory does have some plot holes. As we stated prior, we really believe that Scooby-Dooby-Doo can be the result of an experiment that just went wrong. While he serves as the result of this experiment, he wasn't the first to undergo it. Looking into the archives of Scooby-Dooby-Doo history, we can actually trace his birth back to his parents' actual location. And no, it wasn't in Russia. Scooby-Doo was born at the Douville Veterinary Hospital to Mumsy and Dada Doo. His first words were Scooby-Doo, so his father decided to name him that. Scooby also has cousins, siblings, and even nephews, Scooby-Dum and Scrappy, to name a few. Whether it was Scooby's parents, or Scooby's parents' parents, or Scooby's parents' parents, the mystery is still here of who underwent these experiments first. His parents were of German descent, being Great Danes, of course. While at first we found this to be a plot hole, we can make the assumption that Scooby-Doo himself was not the experiment, but rather his parents or grandparents were. The Reddit theory also points out how Scooby may have been running from the CIA. In a way, the CIA is known for their intelligence and experimental ways as well. They could have been searching for Scooby this whole entire time, hence the name of the original airing, Scooby-Doo. Where are you?
Scooby-Dooby-Doo.